Matt Lauer and Garrison Keillor both fired for weird sex stuff. Joe Scarborough accused of murder. Muslim videos, showdown at the CFPB. There is so much news to talk about. But isn't it strange that nobody is talking about the tax reform bill passing the Budget Committee yesterday? I wonder why that is. We will analyze Donald Trump's slick fingers. Then Philip Wegmann of the Washington Examiner and Paul Bois of the Daily Wire join the Panel of Deplorables to discuss how we're finally winning the war on Christmas. A descendant of Pocahontas smacks down Elizabeth Warren, and today's spate of Democrat sex scandals. Just a reminder, every single day now, there have been entirely new Democrat sex scandals. I am Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. There is so much to talk about. We will get to all of the weird sex stuff and the schadenfreude, I promise. But I want to talk a little bit first about Donald Trump, the prestidigitator. The prestidigitator. He's got slick fingers. The actual story, the one that matters for public policy right now, is tax reform. We have been hearing for months, by the way, from Never Trump Republicans that tax reform is dead on arrival. It's impossible. We're not going to get it. The left, predictably, has been harping on how awful the proposal is, how it's only going to benefit rich people. It's only going to cut their taxes because obviously rich people are the only ones who pay taxes. But actually, the bill is quite different than all that. Trump has been relatively mum on tax reform. He talks about it here and there. Why is that? Of his 31 latest tweets, 3 of them mentioned tax cuts. And by the way, only to acknowledge that it passed the committee or to start tying the tax cuts to the good economic news. 7 tweets talked about how great the economy is doing. 1 tweet mentioned the NFL. 3 mentioned Melania, Christmas, or Melania and Christmas. 2 of them mentioned Matt Lauer. Almost as many tweets mentioned Matt Lauer as his legislative agenda. 3 showed videos of Muslims doing terrible things. That's the same number as talking about tax cuts. 3 talked about fake news. 1 suggested that Joe Scarborough murdered a staffer. 1 of them told his followers to look into NBC chairman Andy Lack's past. Why is Trump tweeting about these things? It's because he's a prestidigitator. If you don't know that word, that's not like Amanda's name, prestigiacomo. It's prestidigitator. It's a word for people who have quick fingers, like a magician. Magic, where it's a sleight of hand, that is prestidigitation. Look over here, look over there, what's that? And then when we're looking at that thing, something else is happening over here. So of all these tweets, why is he talking about each of these? The economy is obvious. He's trying to tie the strong economy to his tax plan. He talks about how great the economy is doing, He's building up his credibility on the economy. Then he's saying we need this new economic agenda, this new economic legislation. Why Matt Lauer? Matt Lauer is the biggest news of the day. He has been fired for apparent sexual assault in Rio de Janeiro, but apparently rampant womanizing, sexual harassment at NBC. But he doesn't just leave it at Matt Lauer. He doesn't just, look, it would be great to revel in Matt Lauer going down. That guy is a jerk. He's a left-wing hack. He was a jerk to President Bush when he would interview him. But he's not doing that. Trump isn't just leaving it in schadenfreude. He's tying it to Joe Scarborough. Why? Because he's trying to discredit the left-wing attack dog media. He's trying to paint with a much broader brush. That's why he's going after NBC chairman Andy Lack. Now, why is he tweeting about the NFL? The NFL is a culture point that is extremely popular for Donald Trump. He has broad agreement across the country on this. His approval rating is doing a lot better than the NFL's approval rating. People are cutting cable because of the shenanigans and left-wing activism they see every night at the NFL. And why the Christmas tweets? Well, they preview the War on Christmas theme, which we're already beginning to see, but I promise you we're going to see more of it this month. Why the Muslim videos? The Muslim videos, I think, tell a lot of the story. He was retweeting videos of Muslims doing awful things, attacking people and beheading a statue of the Virgin Mary, and they were all posted by Jada Franzen. She's the deputy leader of Britain First, which is a right-wing group. And this woman, who is she? He doesn't follow her on Twitter, right? He only follows 45 people on Twitter. Why tweet her? This is a woman who was found guilty of a hate crime. So the left is freaking out about this. They say he's retweeting far-right criminals, hate criminals, bigots, whatever. What was her hate crime? A simple Google search will tell you her hate crime was saying that Islam oppresses women. That was the crime. because they don't have the First Amendment over there in the UK. They don't have freedom of speech. You can be convicted of a hate crime for just saying something which is obviously true. Obviously, Sharia law isn't good for women. A rule that says that women need to wear burlap sacks over them in Middle Eastern heat, that can't possibly be good for women. Any concept we have in the West of women's rights does not apply. Now, free speech, though, and PC, these aren't just random issues. They're central issues to Donald Trump's popularity. And this is where the claim breaks down. Why the Never Trump right and his opponents on the left, they say he's just crazy, he's just tweeting whatever. There's no rhyme or reason to it. He's a madman with his finger on the nuclear codes and the other finger on Twitter. There's no evidence that Donald Trump hates Muslim people. There's no evidence. In the 4 decades that we've known about Donald Trump, we've never seen these allegations of bigotry before. Clearly, it has to serve a strategic purpose. Or we're suggesting that he just became a bigot overnight, that he just became an Islamophobe overnight or something, and he just so happened to pick a woman that ties in directly with his anti-PC, pro-free speech agenda. It doesn't work. At a certain point, either the guy just gets lucky and lucky and lucky, and he's absurdly lucky at multiple things at one time for 40 years, or he doesn't just have air blowing between his ears. He doesn't just have nothing going on in his head. He has some strategic thought and a good gut that tells him how to enact it tactically. So what is he not tweeting about? This is the actual story. I'm perfectly willing to talk about it because it's a great wing for the Republicans and for conservatives, and because the left-wing media doesn't watch my show, so I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school or pulling the veil up on this. He isn't talking about tax reform. But what was he doing yesterday? Trump spent most of yesterday on Capitol Hill bullying Republican senators into voting for the GOP tax reform in the Budget Committee. According to a Senate source for The Hill, Trump went after Ron Johnson by name. Quote, this is in The Hill. He told him to stop blocking it and to work out his concerns with the rest of the conference. He told him he would have a chance to offer amendments and he should stop being an impediment. Trump also leaned on Bob Corker and James Lankford, both of whom are Republicans that threatened to vote against the bill in committee. Senate GOP Whip John Cornyn said it was Trump's strong-arming that gave the bill, quote, a shot of adrenaline, that gave this bill that everyone has been predicting on both sides of the aisle, it's going nowhere, it's going to die in committee. Not so. Gave it some momentum. Last month, Trump also met with the entire Senate GOP caucus to get them on the same page on tax reform. Now, to analyze all of this prestidigitation and the tax reform bill and the likelihood that it passes, we bring on our panel of deplorables. We have Paul Cardinal Bois from the Daily Wire, and we're lucky to be joined by Philip Wegmann from the Washington Examiner. Look how much realer, by the way, how much more serious Philip's background looks than Paul's, who it appears is coming from St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I want to get to this tax reform. Philip, are we going to get it? You're a serious journalist. You have sources. You're paying attention in D.C. Are we going to get tax reform, and if so, when?
Certainly, the president hopes that it's going to happen ahead of Christmas. I don't know if that's actually going to get done. Sometimes it sounds a little bit like wishful thinking. He had that productive meeting with Republicans earlier on. But if you start taking a look at some of the objections, I mean, the whip count is getting pretty ugly. You've got Collins, who objects to the individual mandate. You've got Ron Johnson that you just mentioned, and then also Lankford and some others. And then, I have no idea what John McCain thinks about, regular order. He's voted against tax cuts twice before. And Republicans they can only lose 2 votes. So the whip count is really ugly. This one's going to come down to the wire.
It's certainly going to come down to the wire. I don't know what John McCain thinks about regular order. I don't quite know what he thinks about these tax cuts, but I do know what he thinks about Donald Trump and what he thinks about his legacy, and that does not look good for us. Mr. Bois, make me happier, lighten me up. Are we going to get tax cuts? And then I want to talk about the Trumpiness of it all. But first, do you think we're going to get it?
I mean, it really is all up in the air right now. The biggest problem that we have going on right now is mainly just the GOP just getting it all together. I sincerely hope that we were going to get healthcare reform, and the GOP didn't deliver that. So it's really just, can they all come together right now? And as of right now, I'm not seeing that.
And the coming together is a question, because the I think the most cogent argument from the Never Trump right, the persistently Never Trump right, is, well, Donald Trump engages in these crazy excesses, like accusing Joe Scarborough of murder on Twitter or something, or implying that Joe Scarborough had some hand in this staffer's death. And therefore, if we Republicans, if we conservatives enjoy the successes, and there have been many successes of this administration, both culturally and politically, as real matters of government, if we enjoy those, or if we encourage those, or if we vote for him, then we own Trump. We own his excesses. We'll have to answer for them, and we'll look really bad or something. We won't be able to preen as much as we would like to preen. Philip, do you think that's true? Do you think that if we encourage Trump in his presidency, that we're going to have to face some awful reckoning in the future?
I think the reckoning already took place. I mean, the president is the president because he won the election. But guys like Lindsey Graham, who were adamantly opposed to the president earlier on, they're coming around. I mean, Lindsey Graham's as establishment as you can get, but he's even willing to work with the president because I think a lot of these guys know the White House isn't the only thing up for grabs. They're also going to lose their majorities if they don't deliver something. So yeah, there's that long game. There's that fear of what are we going to do with Donald Trump? What's he going to do to our party and our identity? But I think in the moment, at least on tax reform, I think these guys are willing to put away some of that bickering and focus on the bill itself.
And I do think there is an aspect of Trump which is just that he is a character. He's a one-of-a-kind. He's an American original. We talked yesterday about how there's no need to have the Jersey Shore or reality television when Donald Trump, the king of reality TV, has made reality into reality TV.
Yeah, he's the best show in town.
It is the best show in town, and I think Camille Paglia said that she would vote for him because he's a carnival barker, and she likes that. And there is something, it seems to me, that he doesn't pretend to be a regular Republican. He doesn't even really pretend to represent the mainstream of conservative movement or of the Republican Party. He's his own self. Mr. Bois, do you think that his caricature and the caricature that he plays up for the cameras and for Twitter, do you think that that will inoculate conservatives, or should we be terribly worried about our own image and constantly looking in the mirror and saying, well, who cares if we get all these great things accomplished for the country? How will I look when it's all over?
I think that kind of pearl clutching regarding President Trump really is going to do nobody any favors. And that was part of, I think, every voter's just worry throughout the election, and the issue that they had to struggle with internally was, by going in with President Trump, am I going to be destroying myself in the future? But I think we all got to man up and just be like, all right, we're in this. I mean, we are in an existential threat, culturally. So I say, get rid of that fear, dive in. And, on terms of what Trump has been successful at and his excesses, and should we be more worried about his excesses, I think we got to really define what we want Trump really to be successful in. I really do not believe that we elected Trump for anything legislatively. I think we strictly elected him so he can be the guy when Colin Kaepernick is being a complete jerk to all of us and spitting on the flag. He just says, throw that SOB out, and next thing you know, we're all cheering and we feel like we got ourselves a cultural cheerleader, and then we're emboldened and we feel like we can go out there and we can stick it to the people who are telling us what to do and what to say, and that's why we elected him. And that he has been 100% successful, and we should not be worried.
I half agree with you, but I must say I am compelled by Ann Coulter's argument that we elected this guy for issues. He was talking about issues that other people weren't talking about. He was talking to a group of voters that both parties ignored, and I like when he calls out Colin Kaepernick as much as the next guy. That's very important. Politics follows culture. The culture is key here. It's related. Cult is related to culture. It's related to what we worship. And certainly that's the case. Everything else is just accounting, you might say. That said, there have been great policy victories. We've seen them, obviously, on the courts, up to Neil Gorsuch. We've seen them in massive deregulation, in trying to rein in these awful, godless, headless, unaccountable executive agencies. We've seen it in foreign policy. We've seen it in social policy, like the Mexico City rule, like abortion. Pro-life he's been excellent on. So, yeah, certainly the culture is maybe the key aspect of Trump, but he's given us a lot of policy victories. And I really wouldn't want to see all of that go away. I wouldn't want to turn my back on that just because I'm uncomfortable with him making hilarious and probably a little excessive claims about Joe Scarborough or whatever. I love that show. I love the prestidigitation. And we have much more to talk about, by the way. Speaking of the culture, we have much more to talk about in the war on Christmas. We have to talk about all of the weird Democrat sex stuff, and we have to dance on Matt Lauer's professional grave, because what would this show be without a little schadenfreude? It is fun. We should do it. He's been a jerk to the right for a long time. But if you don't subscribe to the Daily Wire, I'm sorry, you can't see it. We appreciate all of our current subscribers. They help us keep the lights on. They help us keep Covfefe in my cup. They even help us get serious journalists like Philip. This is like a first over here. We usually just have the Covfefe panel, but we've got serious analysis going on. But you can't see that unless you go to dailywire.com right now. What do you get? You get me, you get the Andrew Klavan Show, you get the Ben Shapiro Show, no ads on the website, blah, blah, blah. But look, all that's just accounting, folks, isn't it? Because what you could get is the cultural touchstone here, the Leftist Tears Tumblr. As I think nobody will be left in Hollywood other than Kevin Sorbo, maybe, and nobody will be left in the media except probably Ben Shapiro. So when all of those leftist tears start flowing and everyone is drowning in them, make sure that you have a vessel so that you don't drown. You can keep them hot or cold, always salty and delicious. Go to thedailywire.com right now. We'll be right back.